In this video, I want to discuss how I want you to end, or a general ending technique for our sustained analysis project. And in this case, it was a best practice paper. So the question we'll talk about and think about is how can we end this paper properly? Now, in the paper itself, you are to list a number of practices, viable practices that are extant, or that are operative now. People will actually engage in these practices, and from these practices, you are going to pull forth. You may pull out one and say this is the best way to do it, or you may pull out a combination of a couple and give it your own name, and say in this practice, the best practice is to actually take a couple parts from some of the ways people are doing it out there now and combine them into this method. So it might be a harvesting of the best of a couple of practices, and that might be your best practice. I would suggest giving it a name that makes it clear what is happening. So maybe something like that practice would be something like the best of all worlds practice, or something like that. And the idea would be, each one of these methods has something good in it, and this is how you would actually do it. So that itself could be a method, a practice, and you might call that the best practice. Now again, the best practice might be to say, look, these are the commonly accepted ways of doing X. Really, you shouldn't be messing with X at all, and the best practice is to avoid it altogether, or to go back to one of the things we didn't look at in length, and that is to get an expert involved. Now, and then, in your best practice, if that is actually at this point what you think is the best thing you can do, you plus someone else, or just someone else altogether, describe who that someone else needs to look like, what that someone else needs to look like. So give pointers of how to pick the proper someone else to do this for you. That might be how you end it. But for all of these, what we're really doing is we're talking about a specific practice, right? Or a practice that we consider to be the best one that's tied to the specific topic we were talking to, okay? So on a very specific level, you might settle down on one of these practices, or a collated or a conjoined group of parts from some of these best practices. I would like to see that. Then what you can do to provide a little more of a sense of the way the paper is wrapping up and closing up, step away even further and say, now, specifically, that's if you are set on doing this and you want some specific instructions, here's what I suggest. But then more generally, here are some very basic concepts that will always be good to follow. One, don't let someone else do your thinking for you. Two, consider the effect it has on other parts of your life. Something like that. And in other words, this would be more general advice as far as what would be the best way to approach all of this. So I would definitely say, concerning, for example, the investing processes that we've looked at, first of all, be sure to critically challenge all presuppositions that are coming at you from the outside and from the inside. Okay, so here's a presupposition I would critically challenge. Do you have to worry about providing for your needs financially when you retire? Now, what I mean by that is are you given the right, do you have the duty or the right to worry about what's going to happen 20, 30, 40 years from now? Now, it just seems to make sense that yes, look ahead, be prepared, right? But what I mean by critically challenge this is, how far ahead is ahead? And when someone says, look ahead, look out for what might happen in the future, are we talking about next week, a year from now, or 30 years from now? And how many of us can actually say what the future is going to look like 30 years from now? We assume that tomorrow will resemble yesterday, right? So there are similarities we assume are going to extend through short periods of time. All right, so the immediate future is, we think, going to resemble the immediate past. And these are some ways we just operate as far as human beings. But 30 years from now, 20 years from now, these are some presuppositions, some assumptions I would challenge. And I'm not saying that you have to eschew them or reject them, but you do need to actually critically say, why do I think it is right to worry about money? Why do I think why do I think it is right for me to spend so much time thinking and so much of my activity starting now? Think of the 20 or 30 something crowd, okay? Preparing for this event that will happen 30 years from now. So one of the basic things I would say is just be willing to sit back and say, now wait a minute, why do I believe this? If I believe it, why? What are my reasons? And I think that it is always a bit, unless you're dealing with revealed truth, just to accept something as true because someone else tells you it's true, that's tricky. That often comes back to as a wrong way to go about something. All right, so that's what I mean. There are two ways of giving advice concerning activity about X. One is very specific. Here are like specific instructions for how to have a healthy meal tonight. First of all, think of the size of the portion. Think of the calories that are involved. Think of the refined sugar or the empty carbs that are there. Think of all sorts of stuff, right? So let's if we're going to have beans with meat, let's talk about the type of meat we need to have. How we're going to cook this meat. If we're going to talk about green beans, how much butter are we putting on them? Should we even have butter? That sort of stuff. You can get very specific with instructions as far to how to have a really good meal tonight, if you're going to have meat and green beans with it, right? But then you can step back at a much more general step away and say, all right, but that's fine for that one meal, but in general, you need to think about portion control. You need to think about the exercise that you are going to use to burn off that meal, and think about general ways in which the general rules in which healthy eating of healthy eating that will inform what happens in that specific meal. So for investing, we would say, what are some of the very basic big rules that would inform how you deal with stocks? So just another one is don't rush into things. If you realize that you are spreading money around because you're excited about something, the very state of excitement might cloud your critical judgment. So one very general rule would be, calm down, count to 100, or wait till tomorrow. Because if you take it as a general practice to try to, there's a good opportunity, let's do it right now, and you're not actually setting time to think, and you're not calming down or slowing down so the emotions and the excitement doesn't play into how you are doing this. And if you just continue on with this practice, pretty soon you're making decisions based on the excitement level it generates in you, and not based on critically examining the processes of how this investment is going to give you a return. All right, so a general rule would be take the excitement out of it. Another general rule would be watch out for greed. Watch out for greed. So you make a little bit, and then you make a little bit more, and you realize this is really making you feel happy. This is making you feel good. This is making you feel responsible, and you decide to keep on doing this month by month by month, and before you know it, you turn into a very, very greedy person. And if you can see that happening, what I'm saying is some of these very general rules you can flip it around and say it's never right to be greedy, So it's always right to watch out for greed. All right. Another thing I would challenge about retirement is this notion of the nest egg. And you're putting away money into an account, okay? And you're telling yourself, I'm never touching this money. This is my retirement money. And I'm investing it somewhere, and this portfolio just stays locked and shut. Well, what happens if you have a brother or a sister or a mother or a father or someone else you have an obligation to help, or you should help financially, and it's going to take $5,000? Are you willing to go into your retirement account and get that $5,000 to give to someone that needs it now? But no, because the principle is there. We don't touch this. But you have $5,000 in there, don't you? And you can give it to someone, can't you? That needs it now. So, how solid is that wall going to be that sequesters your money? And is it going to turn into something bad that's going to stop you from having a charitable spirit, a proper charitable spirit? So, then the flip side is, well, if you don't have that sort of principle, you're taking money for everything. For the water heater that broke, for the car repair, for the new air condition that you think you need in this bedroom. And so it's like the cookie jar that someone has cookies in it and says, well, I can't stop eating cookies, but I gotta stop. I gotta leave these things in this jar, or I'm gonna eat all the cookies. And so they put them up on a shelf, and it's hard to get, right? So, now I won't get the cookies because it's so hard to get. Well, then you just get a ladder and you get the cookies. And then you put a chain around the cookie jar and a lock, and it's up on the shelf. Well, now you just get the ladder and a key. You can still get the cookies. So, with the retirement fund, sometimes you can still get it. So what is going to be your determining rules as far as how to deal with leaving this money alone? And is it right to leave the money alone? See, now this is what I mean about coming up with some ways to critically assess. I'm not going to say refute or reject, but critically assess some notions that seem on the surface to be self-evident and just the right thing to do. Bringing up these at the end as sort of like major best practice ways that across the board are just good activity, good sound principles, would be a great way to end this sort of paper. Because think of how we began it. You began with the funnel. All right, so you started broad as far as like investment in general, and then we went narrow to stocks, and then we started really defining our scope, the scope of the audience, the type of stocks, the type of trading, and we examined that. All right, so now let's complete the hourglass. We had the funnel, then you have the narrow middle, and now as you end, you start coming back out again. So you have sort of an hourglass structure, and your audience is going to recognize that as a pattern, as a structure, and is going to appreciate that. So I have my kid here. He's making an entrance. This is Solly, and instead of shutting the video and wasting everything I've done, I may as well incorporate him in it, and that way if he's watching, he won't be yelping about some toy or something, right? And I'll be able to finish the video. So this is Solomon. We call him Solly. I hear another one coming, so we might have multiple figures in here. Oh yes, this is Clive. You want to?
No.
Okay, well.
Solly saw me lunch.
Well, I'll take him up in a second. Okay. My second oldest, Clive, has opted not to become face on the screen. So, but he is huddling here. Come on, you want to come up here? No. Okay. Your audience is going to recognize that structure. All right, and it's going to appreciate that. So anything that signals to the audience on the communication level, and they're experts at this. They've been communicating and accepting text communication as far as coded and as a text is since they could read. So they can recognize the structures of a work, saying, "Oh, now we're beginning to get to the end," and that prepares them mentally to get into the mode that's willing to assess your topic from a faraway stance. So, at the very end, nailing that best practice specifically, and then moving back out into best practices generally provides an hourglass structure that will signal to the audience you're closing it up. Now, let's throw something else in it to make it really powerful, and that's this generating the connections idea. All right, you generated a connection, and I gave you some reading toward the end, and I asked you, hey, think how this reading connects to each other. What's one point it connects to each other? And we came up with one of those points. Now, if you manage to throw that in here strategically, as soon as you start your closing, maybe just ask your reader to take a mental leap away from everything and consider something else that apparently is new altogether. The novelty lets the reader's mind shift gears a little bit. You want to get down? Okay. You go upstairs, all right?
Sorry. Yeah.
No, shh. Go on up. The novelty. Sorry about that, but again, this video is going for a while, and if I were just to stop it, I would lose a lot. So, anyway, I gave you a little bit of a break, right, with those kids. Now we can refocus, and let's turn that into a writing lesson. Sometimes when you step away from your topic and you bring in something completely new, like I did with Solly, okay, it makes the audience kind of like sit up a little bit and, oh, let's refocus. What's going on here? Is there something new here? And then you have a couple more minutes of renewed attention that the audience is willing to give you. So in order to introduce that break, I would say, hey, why don't you just throw in that connection we made with the readings we got about the articles on addiction, and then the man who sells himself at the IPO, and then start with that, and then show how. So what I'm saying is, maybe you have articulated the actual best practice somewhere, and now you want like the big ending of the paper. Okay, well, put some white space or something. Let's start with a new paragraph where you just talk about the man who sells himself with the IPO, and then say, look, one way he's similar to the people that are in addiction is that all of them have given up rights to their body actions and to their actual activities, and some of them feel trapped in it, and they are it's something that ends up making them despise themselves, but in the moment they seem to, it's a double-minded thing, because in the moment they're just enthralled with it, they're enslaved to this activity, but then they can step away and sort of assess that, hey, this is not the right thing for me, I wish I could stop, but I can't, and so they're very much aware of this lack of ownership to their actual activity and the trap, because it doesn't seem like there's anyone standing over them making them do this, but in fact there is this dichotomy in themselves, right, that there seems to be someone else that's in them making them do this, and making them enjoy it, and they are enjoying it in the moment, but then they're ashamed afterward. There's a fellow, right, the guy who sold himself in the IPO, that figured out how to remove the shame from this, because he covers over this activity. Essentially it's the same activity. He's lost control too, right, but he's covered it over with the interpretation of it's a business plan, and it's an experiment. Ultimately, I'm still in charge of this, he says, and this is just a way for me to generate some fun and some money. So he's got it set up as a business, okay, but he still is a type of slave, right? Because he has to do what the voice that's outside are telling him to do. Now he went public with it. Hence, you are reading the article. He went public in a figurative sense, in the fact that he talked to the media about his plan, and so now he has even more accountability or a weight to stay with it, because he knows he's semi-famous for this now. So he's got tons of eyes watching, and the more eyes you have watching, the more prone you are to continue doing what you are doing, because that's what the crowd is expecting you to do. So he's got all these pressures set up strategically to allow him to live through the day without making any core decisions and taking responsibility for them. All right. Now, the way I would generally apply this is that we are actually that type of fellow if we just allow voices from the outside telling us what we should do, why we should do it, and when we should do it, and we just go along doing it. And if we don't critically assess those voices, then we might get the sense that we are doing what we ought to do, which allows us to become self-righteous and full of pride and makes us feel good, because we have goals and we sense that we need to fulfill these goals, and we sense that these goals are properly placed and accepted socially as proper goals, and then we work toward the goals, and so we're working toward success, and we're trying our best, and who can fault you at that point then? So you do get the sense that you're living a justified life, but you're finding your justification only in the process of trying to achieve the goals that these outside voices are telling you are goals worthy to have. All right, so in a sense, the way you would end this whole paper is to say, look, the one thing you don't want to do is just start some retirement plan because you feel that everyone is telling you to start it, and this is the accepted ways. So you go for the 401k and this rollover plan and this portfolio because it's just everyone's telling you that these are the right ways to do it. Well, then at that point, how are you different from the fellow who sells himself as the IPO? All right, so you also need to realize two things at the end. You're telling your audience. One is you need to be able to think outside the box concerning retirement. The second thing is you need to be willing always to own those decisions and to be able to say, I made the decision because I thought this was the best way to go, not because these are the voices that are telling me to do it. And so now you do need to listen to some voices, right? I mean, who can think in a vacuum? But which voices are you going to listen to? So just deciding, hey, it just seems to be everyone is saying, go to college, get the job, stay at the job, work really hard at it. Don't be crazy about your career choice. Find one that's going to give you good benefits. But then your whole point of living life and working life then is right just to have those benefits. So, but that's how a lot of people think. Hey, you just want a job that's going to be there. It's going to be steady. It's going to be enough to help you buy a house. Okay, so the idea of buying a house and buying cars are all wrapped up in this, right? And not necessarily paying for your child's education, but saving for your child's education. That's wrapped up in it too. So you got to be able to do all these things, right? So that's why you need this job. And now you got to be working in that job, even if it's causing you to compromise on certain principles that you have, even if it's stealing your creativity and turning you into someone you never thought you would become. You need to stick with that job because as soon as you lose the job, you lose the benefits. You lose the income, you lose the insurance, the health insurance, all that sort of stuff. So, there's so many voices that seem to be well established. They're telling you what you need to do. And if you say yes to those and then plot ahead, trying hard, working hard to achieve those voices, the goals that these voices tell you need to do, you at the end of the day can say, well, I'm doing my best. I'm working hard at this. I'm being responsible. And then you go to sleep, you get up and do the same thing all over again, and you're the fellow who sold himself on an IPO. So think about that. I think that would be a great way to say to whoever reads this paper of yours, the last thing you want to do is just do what everyone else is telling you to do about this. All right. Now I am telling you something to do, so there seems to be a paradox here, but I am sort of on a different level. Just saying this as the writer of the paper to the readers, because I'm approaching it critically from this type of questioning standpoint. All right, and trying to establish it better. All right, so you don't want to surrender it into this crazy no man's land of no one can ever make a right decision about this. No, because if you really believe that, we would never have written the paper. So why is your decision better than others? Right? So you got to be able to establish it better, and that's what you're doing when you come up with these practices. All right, so think about that. It's not an easy way to do it. Ending this type of paper is never easy. Sometimes you write a paper and you think, well, the ending is going to be just a cinch, but actually the ending here is crucial. All right, because textually and cognitively, your readers have developed and the text has developed so that the ending is the most important part for the best practice paper, because you're making the choice as to which one is the best and you're really trying to establish it, and you're also trying to close the paper up stylistically also. So it's got a lot of things happening, and I hope that you spend some time thinking about it and designing it well. Good luck to you on that.